Hello. Welcome back to another episode of the Around the 412 Fantasy Football Show, brought to you by Keats Barbershop, located in East Rochester, PA. As always, I am your host, Smitty, and as always, I am with my two co-hosts, Drew, Joe. What is going on, fellas? Joe is muted.
Yeah, trying to recover from all these.
He still is. I don't know what he's doing.
I don't know, but I could still hear the background music too. That was very strange, but it's playoff time, baby. Let's get these dubs. This is what we waited all year for.
It's on delay.
This is why we play. This is why we play. I only made the playoffs in one of my four. I told you guys I had a chance at two. Didn't happen. I'm only in the playoffs in one of my four leagues. So
yeah, I hit about a 50% clip this year. I'm at like 6 for 11. I had a heartbreaking loss on Monday Night Football this past week. I had a 10-point lead, Ramondre Stevenson against Hopkins and Nick Folk. We all know how that red wedding of a Monday Night Football game went, but yeah, that's why you do it, and that's why you play. And you know what? It doesn't matter if you're the 1 seed or the 6 seed or wherever you're at. Everybody has a shot. Records are 0-0, and you got to watch the show so you can get after it and get that trophy.
To Joe's point, I have an 11-3 squad that dominated all year. I had Kyler Murray, Ramondre Stevenson, and Dameon Pierce all on that roster. I do not have an RB2 going into the playoffs. Period. Do not have one on the roster.
Tough. I was about to say, Joe said anybody has a shot. With the injuries that we saw take place this weekend, though, if you have multiple of these guys on your roster, you might not have a shot. So let's jump into that before we get any questions or comments going. As always, you guys are more than welcome to join in the conversations, completely cut us off, and ask us something that's not related to what we're talking about. We love it. Put it in the comments. So injury talk. Deebo Samuel will kick us off here, dealing with an ankle and a knee issue.
Yeah, so he has a high ankle sprain and a sprained MCL. Watching the play, I thought that he hurt his back too. It was just he got so torqued up that I couldn't believe that it wasn't worse than what it is. They said, actually, Kyle Shanahan said today, 3-ish weeks. To me, they're going to be dominating the rest of the way you expect. They've been playing really, really well, and their defense is electric. I see him maybe coming back in week 18 just to get a little bit of a spell before the playoffs. But he's probably done for you in fantasy.
Tough scene. Yeah, my dad has him on a team, and I thought that was like best case scenario. Because like we were even talking about in our group chat earlier about the whole high ankle thing, because it looked like yesterday people were putting out that he avoided that. It wasn't a high ankle, but then you said like the 49ers themselves on their website were saying it was. So tough one last night. Monday Night Football, Kyler Murray, non-contact. It looked bad, obviously. Gets carted off. We know something serious. Today it was confirmed. It's a torn ACL. I mean, you got to look. Obviously, his season's done this year. Like, no crap. But you look at next year now, too. I mean, a big part of his game is his rushing ability. And you're not going to see that come back until late next year, if not 2024. So, I mean, I don't even know. We're going to talk about this more as like how it affects the guys around him. But for Kyler himself, Drew, you were nodding your head there, so you agree like he's not going to have that rushing ability, when he comes back next year.
Well, you know how I am with torn ACLs. I don't really like to have a guy coming off a torn ACL on my roster that following year. I mean, for dynasty aspects, I own him in every dynasty league that I have, and I'm very concerned. If you could, I would try to buy the dip on him. I'm not going to get rid of him.
Can I buy the dip?
You cannot buy the dip. It's just tough because like he's not going to run. Maybe he'll work. I mean, he's not going to work much in the offseason. Obviously, he's not going to be able to do anything, but it could have positive regression for his receivers next year just because they're going to have to throw the ball more. He's not going to be moving around. Maybe his running backs, I'm not sure. James Conner also got hurt, but he looks like he came back, and he's an injury-prone guy, so I don't know how they're going to utilize their offense with running backs next year, but the dude's not going to be taking a lot of the rushing in the red zone away from these running backs or these opportunities from these receivers. So, I mean, it could help them because he's going to be throwing the ball more or handing it off. But for him himself, I'm worried about him as a fantasy asset for next year because of the lack of rushing.
Well, do you think we have to worry about him playing at all next year? I mean, you look at somebody
He's
who had
probably going to start in the pup.
Yeah. Because we'll see. I mean, you look at somebody like, I know Odell Beckham, it was multiple months later, but I mean, we haven't even seen him work out yet. So
Yeah, that was a 2-month difference,
yeah.
right?
I was
When
told
you
that he was going to be ready week 1, though.
Who said that? Odell?
No, it was not Odell.
It was not Odell.
Was it me?
No, it was
Yeah.
someone that said that we should trade Deontay and then sign Odell because he's going to be ready week 1.
Yins
Well,
are crazy for
obviously.
thinking that.
Obviously. Deontay's a wide receiver 4 on any other team, guys. Come on.
Let's talk about some concussions with 3 quarterbacks, actually.
Yeah.
Kenny Pickett, Russell Wilson, Tyler Huntley, all dealing with concussions.
Yeah, the Ravens are making it seem like Tyler Huntley is probable to go this week. He's going to progress through the protocol per Harbaugh.
Oh, did he say that? I thought they said he was not likely. I need to learn
Oh,
how
I
to
was
read.
reading that.
No, it was because he wasn't. They didn't like do anything today, but they said he would have participated.
Yeah,
I misread that. I thought he was out. I ranked like the third string guy was going to be playing.
no. Huntley looks like he'll probably play. I'm a little concerned about Russ. He had that bump on his forehead too. A hematoma. Yeah.
That was scary looking.
Yeah.
And they said he was knocked out too, like unconscious.
Yeah, and that's really disappointing too. Obviously, you want his health to be good, but he actually had his best game of this season. I mean, they went down early, and it was mostly garbage time trying to get him back in it. But he responded, so that's kind of disappointing that he finally got on like in motion, and then he got knocked out the way he did.
Yeah.
And then Kenny, he just had one a few weeks back. I think they'll be careful with him, but based on what Tomlin said today, if he does practice, he will play. So you just have to monitor him throughout the week and see if he'll be available come Sunday.
Right. A guy I definitely didn't have ranked up until 5 minutes ago in our wide receiver rankings, T. Higgins, dealing with a hamstring injury.
Yeah. Anybody listening to this is probably angry if they own him because the team did not notify the world that he had a setback on his hamstring injury in warmups, and then apparently he snuck out on the field.
They should have to forfeit the remainder of their games.
They should have to pay my fantasy buy-ins.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he's going to play moving forward. I think they're going to let him sit. Obviously, they have bigger things that they're looking into as far as going to the Super Bowl, so they're not going to rush him back. Tyler Boyd, which he was next on our list, dislocated his finger. So Jamar Chase, like he took over last year in the fantasy playoffs, and it looks like he's going to have that same opportunity to do so this year.
Man, not that it really matters because you're catching with 2 hands anyway, but what finger was it for Tyler Boyd?
I think it was his index finger.
Yeah, his index finger, yeah.
Yeah.
On his right?
I'm actually not sure.
Not that it really like matters, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, but now you're looking at somebody that like you would never have expected in a million years to have like fantasy relevance, but you got like Trent Irwin. Like potentially like slotting into lineups for playoffs. Like it's brutal.
Hayden Hurst uptick?
He's on IR.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. Who's the other? Do they have another tight end that plays?
Mitch Wilcox.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just, I mean, you could expect 15 targets a week from Chase. He got 15 last week. It's just,
I wonder if P. Ryan will get more of an uptick too, like just using him kind of like, all right, like we need to just dump it off to somebody and
Jerick McKinnon.
Kind of like that, yeah.
I mean, Samaje's been playing more since Mixon's concussion. They basically said that they expect him to come back, no issues, but he hasn't really been playing as much as he was prior to the concussion. So, I mean, I don't think that's any different as far as Pirine goes because he's already been playing, and we've seen what the offense has looked like in that regard already.
Right. And then we got a plethora of running back injuries here, right? The last 4 to wrap this up. Dameon Pierce, show favorite, dealing with a high ankle. This is probably, I mean, it knocks him out obviously for the fantasy season.
Yeah, he's probably done for the year.
Yeah.
Ogunbowale season though.
I was him, and I was looking at Rex Burkhead. I was trying to see how they did their splits after Pierce went down, but I don't think that there was enough of a sample size.
Well, it was weird because the person that got the most work was Eno Benjamin, and then they waived him after the game. So
which I'm worried that he ends up in Kansas City, and that'll screw everything up for us and me later on in the show because they tried
Kansas City.
They put a claim in on him earlier a couple weeks back.
Really?
Yeah.
When he first got picked up by Houston, yeah, they also submitted a claim.
So I'm worried about that, but
I don't. Why is he like? Why did the Cardinals even waive him to begin with? Especially with like Like he looked fine, in my opinion, in the absence of James Conner and with Conner's injury history.
I thought that they thought Keontae Ingram was looking good when he had some opportunities.
Dang it, Chad. I mean, let's shut it down right here. The show's over. Good luck in your playoffs this week. Nico Collins not playing last week really hurt.
I subbed him out in DFS and it worked out. So
For who?
I did two. I ended up doing 2 leagues or 2 matchups for DFS based on my old lineup, but I took Collins out and I replaced him with Philip Dorsett in one. I replaced him with Chris Moore in the other. Chris Moore hit.
Yeah.
So.
Chad, you know what season it is though? Zay Jones. That's right.
Ooh.
Where we at? Where we at on things? Damian Pierce, Wilson, dealing with a hip injury.
Yeah, so they don't have much on it. He's day to day.
Is that Jeff Wilson?
Jeff Wilson. Yeah, he got carted off with that hip injury. So I was thinking at the time maybe it was like a hip pointer, maybe he had a stinger. But they haven't really said much about his status. But he's something that you have to monitor this week.
Gotcha. White dealing with an abdomen.
Yeah, he just got absolutely destroyed. Like Matt Milano just hit him so hard in the gut. Like,
oh, never mind. What were you? What thinking? I said earlier wasn't correct because it just says his last name, and I didn't know who this Mike White is. Who we're talking about?
Rashad White? Did he get hurt?
I have no idea.
He did not. Just emotionally after the beatdown that they took last week.
Yeah. Mike White's gonna play though. I mean, I like him. This week. Play the Lions.
He's gonna be playing. He's gonna be handing the ball off to somebody.
The dude's a dog.
He's gonna be turning around and handing the ball off to somebody.
He's about to be a dog with the insides that are made of soup if he keeps getting hit like that.
He's playing for his career though. You could tell like he thinks he has an opportunity to take that job from Wilson. He's really gutting it out.
I mean, all 3 of us could probably take that job from Wilson right now, honestly.
What do we think about this? So it feels like it kind of explains the entire fantasy year in a nutshell, but I'm starting Pacheco over Chubb this week. Am I crazy, or did we finally reach that point?
Let's wait till later in the show.
I have them pretty closely ranked. I think I have them 12 and 14.
Let me see. I can tell you. Pacheco, Zach, you did not rank.
What?
You did not rank him.
All right. Well, as I'm re-ranking right now, who did I have?
I had him at 14 just because of the studs.
I have Chubb at 13. I think he's an RB2 matchup. A little bit of a tougher play. I did not rank Pacheco. I think that the PPR upside of McKinnon is the way to go if it's me. Out of the 2, he has a high floor though, so I think if you're looking for that, then it's a safe play to play Pacheco. But I wouldn't unless you get a touchdown from him, like you're just going to get whatever yards that he has. So that's kind of the risk there. With Chubb, it's kind of weird. I've been watching the Browns games just to see how Watson progresses as he shakes off the rust. And it just feels like, and maybe this shouldn't have been a surprise, but it doesn't feel like they're featuring Chubb very much in the offense. And they're trying to show that they made the right decision by having Watson in there, which makes no sense because he would make the offense so much easier for him if they would just hand the ball off to Chubb. But looking back, like whenever early in the season, it was like a lock for like 16 carries at minimum for him. And yeah, I think going into halftime last week, he only had a handful. So it'll be interesting to see what they have going forward. Divisional games always seem to be a little bit strange. But I'd still be rolling with Chubb. I don't think I'd do something that drastic unless I needed like a home run or something like that. But I wouldn't be making that move.
I like Pacheco over McKinnon though, just because he's been getting 15 touches a week. And even though McKinnon's getting a lot of the passing down work, if you take this week out where he just absolutely exploded, it wasn't that much more than what Pacheco was getting. He was getting like 3 targets a week, and McKinnon's at 6. So if you're getting his 15 rushing carries and then 3 less targets, like I kind of prefer Pacheco.
Fair.
Yeah, I prefer Pacheco over McKinnon, I think, even though apparently my rankings do not reflect that. However, I definitely prefer Chubb over Pacheco. So, any word on Ramondre is in protocol or not. I know he wasn't healthy after the ankle thing, but I believe it was a head injury that knocked him out for good.
They haven't said anything. They haven't said anything about head injury. I know they asked him because he is from Vegas. They were asking if he was going to play, and he was feeling somewhat hopeful that he would.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we know one of us in here needs him to play, right? Actually, two of us in here need him to play.
Everyone needs him to play.
Joe
You guys
got
both have.
I'm in 11 leagues. I probably have.
I mean, yeah, you
You
need
haven't
everybody.
been dynasty.
The league
You haven't
to
been
play.
dynasty. But you have a
Yeah.
bye.
I do have a bye because I'm the 1 seed, like the king that I am.
Respect Bijan Robinson. That's all I have to say for me.
Although Zach beat me last week in one league because Mac Jones did absolutely nothing, and then I lost my 1 seed for that too. So that was disappointing.
Yeah, that's right.
I started Kyler and Kenny Pickett and got 2.2 total points and fell from 7 to 9 in one of them.
Sheesh.
Woof.
Which, really quick before we move on, I was
Yeah.
thinking about it today. Imagine what Javonte Williams would be doing right now if he never got hurt, considering how their backfield is just terrible. He'd be getting 100% of the work.
Imagine what Breece Hall would be doing.
Imagine if Melvin Gordon wasn't splitting carries with him the whole time before they just decided to cut him because they realized he was bad.
Yeah, but he got cut is my point. So, like, if he was on the field right now, not injured without him there, Mike Boone is on IR now.
Yeah.
I still think they would split the carries.
I don't think so. What could have been?
Nathaniel Hackett's terrible, so nothing would surprise me.
Just remember that when you want to replace Tomlin, that could be your next head coach.
Please not. I mean, I think there's a good amount of coaches in between those two.
Nope, that's it.
If it's not Tomlin, it's Nathaniel Hackett.
Pretty much.
All right. How about some headlines that aren't injury related before we get into the fun stuff?
Yeah, so much to our dismay last week, J.K. Dobbins had a really good game. First game back since mid-October, had a 100-yard performance. It was his first 100-yard game since the end of the 2020 season, so happy for him. Not so happy for us. Another big one to note is that the Bengals, we talked about it a bit, but they're still seeming to roll with that offense without their top receivers. So 3 of their 4 top receivers down, but they seem to kind of figure things out. There was a little bit of panic, I think, especially after they lost that opening game to the Steelers. Early season didn't really look all that great, but Burrow's really come to form. I think they've got like a good balance of offense and defense, but we'll see what happens. And then last but not least, Trevor Lawrence seems to really be figuring things out. He's been playing really good football lately, so huge game last week, 3 touchdowns, ran for 1 as well, and ended up being QB1 for the week, which I don't think anybody was really expecting, but good for him to see. Most touted prospect in football coming out of high school than in college. So it looks like he's finally putting it together. Definitely someone to consider. I don't think he'll be a high draft pick that you look at like the quarterback situation. So he's not going to be like in that tier of say like your Jalen Hurts or your Justin Fields, but he might be somebody that you consider in the later rounds if you're going to still punt on QB and go QB late. But yeah, we'll see what happens.
I was a time traveler. I had Trevor Lawrence and DeAndre Swift flipped the last 2 weeks.
Yeah. That sucks. Too bad we're not counting it. He's QB6 for the year now, by the way. Trevor Lawrence.
Evan Ingram's tight end 4 after like being right outside the top 10 going into the week.
Just behind Geno Smith is Trevor Lawrence.
And it seems like the way that he's playing, he could pass Geno too. It seems like
the Seahawks are falling off.
QB10, Jared Goff.
I'm surprised you didn't say anything about Ken Walker.
Well, he was already out. We talked about him last week.
He's still hurt though. It hurts me. But no, I feel that. All right. Well, moving right along into the world's favorite segments of the week. And maybe
wait. We got something from Chad here. If Ramondre doesn't go, would you roll with Strong, probably starting, or P. Ryan's new slightly better than before limited role? Ooh, we like P. Ryan, but Strong looked good.
Strong looked good. He only had 5 carries, but he had huge chunk plays. I think for me, I would need to see him number one on the depth chart. We'll see how they roll out with it. Because they have, what was the other running back that got some tread?
Kevin Harris.
Kevin Harris. Yeah.
I'm hoping Damian Harris comes back this week. That's where I'm looking.
Kevin Harris was also the back that was in that play that they messed up and fumbled it, but luckily Mac recovered it.
Yeah, that was really bad.
Yeah. You know that Kevin Harris led the SEC in rushing 2 years ago?
Where's he from?
South Carolina.
South Carolina?
Yeah.
I literally thought that he was a made-up person that they just found and were like, here you go. Like, go play football.
I thought that, like, Damian Harris was healthy, but, like, he couldn't come back yet because of the IR designation, so they were calling him Kevin. He's ready a week early, but we can't take him off IR.
But I would take the starting running back of the Patriots over the backup for the Bengals next week, just because of the matchup. So, yeah. All right. So, back to it. Fantasy Football Tinder. We started posting these online, so if you're watching the show and think that our opinions on these matters are terrible, then go right ahead, let us know on at 412FF Show, or you can find us on YouTube, or I don't know, I guess you can comment on all the other Spotify, other platforms, all that stuff, right?
Comments? I don't believe.
Okay, well, comment.
I mean, if you want to leave, you can leave a review.
Tell your mama.
And
the Tinders are weak, but yeah. So what'll happen on the left-hand side of the screen for those able to see? So we have the little Tinder icon there. If you're feeling it, you're vibing it, you want some more, you're gonna swipe right, hit that green heart. If you're not really liking it too much, then we're gonna hit things and swipe left, move on to the next. So I thought this was gonna be a one-time thing, but we ended up having another pair in this first profile. So we saw the Kyler Murray injury. Devastating for potentially for the Arizona offense. So we talked a little bit about like what that might mean for the running back room, but how are you guys feeling in regards to flying with the Cardinals wide receivers moving forward? I did not plan that rhyme until I started talking, by the way.
So the thing is, I'm a bit split here, just because Hopkins is the one that I've seen produce, regardless of who his quarterback is. Like going back to his days in Houston, he had a season where he had 6 different quarterbacks, and he still produced 1,000 yards that year, and was at that point kind of in that discussion with like Julio Jones, Antonio Brown is the best receiver in football. Like we've seen him do it already. Colt McCoy threw 40 attempts in this game. He had 11 targets. I don't really have concern for him, but I almost wish that this was split up because while I'm not worried about him, I think it is Hollywood Brown that would be the one that I don't think has like that consistent floor.
So you don't want the ugly friend, is what you're saying?
Basically, yeah. I need somebody to jump on a grenade for me on this double date. So I guess I'll swipe right because I don't necessarily think it's like Colt McCoy's number of attempts. Like I think it's possible that he keeps them both afloat, but I think Hollywood is the one you have to be more concerned about. I think Hopkins definitely will be fine.
I agree with Zach. I can make it a little easier. So Colt McCoy played 3 games earlier this year when Kyler was hurt, and Hopkins had 7 catches, 9 catches, and 11 catches. He's still getting the targets. He's still getting the receptions. Colt McCoy feeds him. I think Hollywood could still be a flex option, but he's going to be matchup dependent for me. But Hopkins, I still think is a must start.
I think that I swipe right. It's interesting because if you looked at the games with Kyler Murray, Brown was actually getting more work than Hopkins was. And then, like you said, as soon as McCoy came into the game, it's flipped. The one benefit that they do have is that they don't really have a a tight end to really throw to. Trey McBride actually saw 6 targets this past week, but they're not really utilizing him all that much, especially for him being like the touted tight end prospect of last year's draft. I haven't seen anything that's really like Isaiah Likely in the preseason worthy. Just seems kind of like a guy that happens to be playing tight end for them right now. So I do think that Marquise Brown is going to retain some value just because of sheer volume alone. So I'll swipe right on that. I also think that we'll see an uptick in targets for James Conner. So I'm bumping him up in rankings because he's going to get a lot of dump offs from Colt McCoy. Colt McCoy, savvy veteran, all the superlatives of any like boring veteran quarterback.
First guy in, last guy out.
Yeah, exactly. So he's going to play it safe. He's going to take the the easy plays whenever he can. So I think ultimately James Conner could be in for a real treat, especially since they got rid of Benjamin. His time on the field has been unreal. So he was on the field this past week for 71 out of 75 snaps. So we'll see what happens. But that offense is not looking great. The defense doesn't look good either. So I think one way or another they'll get some points.
Yeah. Chad mentioned I think Robbie needs to be on this since he has new life with Colt. He did have 4 receptions for 50 yards in this game, a long of 21. I just look at it, though. He was still only 5th on the team in targets with 4. So he caught all the targets, but the share really wasn't there.
And he only played 23 snaps, so they're just going to have to get him on the field more if they're going to use him. So we'll see.
The ghost of A.J. Green is still there.
More.
Yeah. Respect Greg Dortch, 4 snaps.
Yeah, it's hard for me to think, like, if we're talking about a Hollywood Brown being on the, like, fringe of being a flex, I don't know that we can even begin talking about Robbie Anderson. Unless,
there's not a scenario that I could play Robbie Anderson in a fantasy playoff game right now.
What if you had, like, 5 flexes?
I wouldn't even look at him in DFS dart throws.
Not seeing it.
All right. Well, Chad's thinking when you see him ball out next week, don't come back to him.
It's his only fantasy, so we'll look back on it.
There you go.
Love it. All right, so moving right along, there was one other big week that we didn't really talk about in the Week 14 updates, but one to note was Mr. Evan Engram absolutely dominates the Titans. Became the first tight end of the season with double-digit catches, 120-plus receiving yards, and 2 or more touchdowns in one game. Drew already mentioned his ascension up the tight end ranks on the year, which is just the state of the position. But how are we feeling about this tight end, Evan Engram? Is he your end game tight end that you're looking for your fantasy run?
It's so hard because there's a good amount of mouths to feed there for Lawrence. I mean, with the way he's playing, I think he can support it. You look at Engram jumping from 11 to 4 just with 1 week. I mean, you can say that probably speaks more to the tight end position than it does Evan Engram. But 15 targets on Sunday, 11 catches, 162 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And the other thing is the Jags they're not running the ball. Like the amount that they are or with any effectiveness, it's just not happening. So, I mean, if they're going to throw, 35 to 40 times a game, Zay Jones can get his, Christian Kirk can get his, and there still is a place for Evan Engram to keep producing. So with the position being as weak as it is, I feel pretty good about playing Evan Engram right now.
And to your point, I think we've kind of been sleeping on him for as long as we have because he was still top 10 in targets at the position going into this. Mm-hmm. Now he's 6th in targets overall. Yeah. So I feel like he should have been in lineups, but it was just so quiet on his front that it's good to see that he boomed. He's had a snap share over 75% in all games but 1, and he's have a 60% or higher route percentage in all but 2 games. So he should have been in lineups the whole time, and I just feel like people were sleeping on him.
Yeah, I've been a big Evan Engram supporter, even back when he was in New York. The biggest knock in him has always been able to stay healthy. He's been able to stay on the field. But that was just really that one season. But he's incredibly athletic. Like he's essentially like having a receiver out there. Mm-hmm. And they've been utilizing him a lot, to your point. And I think something that goes underappreciated is that even back to his time at Clemson, Trevor Lawrence really likes throwing to the tight end. You look at even before they had Evan Engram, like they relied on, they made some trades throughout last year to like pick up some additional options for him in the tight end room. Yeah. So if he's going to be out there, I mean, look, come on, let's be honest. Like I would even consider putting like Gronk in my starting lineups with the hope that like he might get signed on Friday and like gets a catch from Brady or something. Like that's just the state of the tight end room right now. But I think that even with a bad matchup, Engram's somebody that you need to have in your lineups just because of the way the Jacksonville offense is kind of tuned up right now. I mean, it's weird. You look at Travis Etienne, everybody thought like in the middle of the season, like boom, like that's your guy. And he didn't have a single target last week. Like he's not doing absolutely anything right now. And it's mind blowing, but Kirk's looking good. Jones is looking good. Engram's looking good. And the person they traded for last year was Dan Arnold. And he had a pretty big role for the team when they got him.
And then he tore his ACL, and then James O'Shaughnessy we were hyping up. So that's a thing.
Yeah.
We were sleeping on him when we were so in on the tight end position in Jacksonville last year. It's kind of surprising we didn't really pick up on this a little sooner.
Yeah.
I think he has a great role moving forward, even beyond like dynasty. I think he could be a long-term solution in Jacksonville.
Yeah, every best ball league that I did this year, I have Evan Ingram. I was pretty excited about it. So super fun. Let's see here. Ooh, Chad thinks that was Kyler's last game as a quarterback for the Cardinals.
He just signed an extension, though.
Trade.
No one's going to trade for a quarterback coming off a torn ACL like that, though. It's
the Jets would.
Mike White's the future.
What a wild scenario. Where's
All
that?
right.
Oh, because Cliff Kingsbury gets fired and they decide to go a whole new direction. I mean,
I just think
Keim has to get fired for sure.
Dude, if he was ugly, he would have got fired like 2 years ago. I stand by that.
That house is sick, though.
Jobs. Yeah, it is.
Sweet tracksuits, too. All right. Last but not least, we have the one, the only, the heavily debated, the return of the Mac, Jerick McKinnon. In PPR formats last week with only 6 carries for 22 yards, he was your running back 1. He had 7 receptions off of 9 targets, 112 yards, and 2 touchdowns, giving him 32.4 fantasy points for the day. Is this the return of the Mac in the Kansas City offense, or is this a 1-week blow-up?
Once again, I don't have too much on this, honestly. I'm just looking at him getting literally all the passing work last week from the running back room with Patrick Mahomes as his quarterback and getting the second most targets besides Travis Kelce. I like him a lot. For this week specifically, I like him. I don't know about going forward, though. It's kind of like a week-to-week thing for me. So I don't know whether to say I'm swiping left or right on this because I don't know if I trust it long-term.
It's Tinder, baby. That's a yes to me.
Yeah, because I guess so. Because if I like it this week, we're going on a date for sure.
That's right.
But we'll see.
It's power hour. Just split decisions.
That's where I'm at, though. I like it this week. I don't know about long term.
Drew.
I'm swiping left.
Ooh.
Jeremy McKinnon had a big week last week. I feel like it was fluky. The 2 touchdowns that he scored, I think they were both long scores where it's just you can't predict long touchdowns. And I think that a lot of people are going to look at this and think that he's a flex option or a must start at the running back position, especially with all the injuries and guys that are getting hurt going into the playoffs. I think Isaiah Pacheco is the guy you want. And I think that people should be aware that McKinnon, without those 2 plays, you're looking at him being essentially just a mid 10-point game.
Why is Chad sleeping on the Texans? They just kept it close with the Cowboys.
They did. That was too close, man. I think this city would have melted down. Like my home would be gone if they would have lost that game last week.
They played a good amount of their games pretty close. I mean, when they played the Eagles, that was close for a minute as well. I think they could keep it within distance where Kansas City's still passing.
And the Browns, which we called that until their offense is completely imploded.
Yeah, that was so predictable. Is that what you were talking about? How you were saying earlier something you knew that just happened recently that was super predictable?
No, it was a Steelers thing. It was the Steelers bringing someone back. I can't remember what it was, but Flash was flexing on. I was like, bro, we all knew this.
Yeah,
Matt Wright.
Shout out to Flash.
All right, so I'm gonna swipe right on McKinnon. I think that a lot of this comes down to roster construction. If you're going to start McKinnon, he to me is like a high range of outcome flex play or somebody that I'm putting in because of injury. So if I'm looking for a potential boom play and I know that I'm going to be down and I don't really have like a serviceable option in my flex, like I think McKinnon is somebody that I feel good about throwing into the lineup. If you look at his last 6 games or so since the bye, he's had a wide range of outcomes. The majority of time, he's finishing in like the low end RB2, so 22, 21, 17. He had the big week last week, but he also has games of RB1, RB48, RB59. You have a plus matchup against Houston this week. Like I said, I think Pacheco is your higher floor guy, but McKinnon obviously has that higher ceiling. So if I'm looking for a ceiling play, I like McKinnon. I think that they're scheming him the ball. They don't really have a lot of options to throw to. But obviously you could totally fall on your face. But that's love, baby.
So my question is, when looking at him as a player going against Houston, should we be looking at the running back matchup as much, or should we be kind of like looking at the receiver matchup because that's where most of his work's coming from?
I think this week he'll be fine. When I swipe left, it's for the whole season. For this week, you saw what Tony Pollard did last week. He was able to beat him on the ground and in the passing game. I think him and Pacheco are both going to have big weeks.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think that you don't necessarily have to look at the wide receiver matchup, but knowing that Houston's been fairly strong in the air, like to me that indicates that they're going to need to leverage
they're going to dump it off more.
Yeah, right. So
yeah.
I despite it being Houston, they have been serviceable in the passing game. You have to keep in mind that two of the last three opponents was Cleveland with Watson week 1, and then Washington, who's a ball of mystery every week whenever they play. But I think that the way that Tony Pollard exploited that offense, I think that Kansas City is going to do something similar, and they've kind of been playing that way the last couple of weeks. So I think that's a good strategy. If they were just giving up stuff across the board, I'd feel a lot worse about McKinnon because they wouldn't have to scheme him touches. But I think it's a unique situation that he can benefit from.
Chad's saying he thinks Ronald Jones will get more points if he's active this week. If that happens, there's not going to be a show next week.
Chad's going to be running the show next week if that happens.
I forgot that he existed.
Chad?
Swift. No.
I pray to Chad every night before I go to bed. All right. On that note, we're going to transition to our next favorite topic of the show, and this is fantasy football, only fantasy, where every week we subscribe to one player who we think is going to have a wonderful performance. Some of us are historically good at this, like Drew Hannes. Some of us are not historically good at it, like myself. And some people are just good at everything like Zach and figure it out as they go. So we'll recap the week that we had last week, let you know how our players did, and then we'll let you know who we have lined up for this week for our OnlyFans. So despite coming in this week as OF3, Drew, we're going to give you the honor of going first in our segment. So how did last week go for you, buddy?
I'm falling off like the Steelers in December. Falling hard. Honestly, I had DeAndre Swift last week, and it really makes no sense to me, like what happened there. Like he really wasn't involved in the offense at all. He only had 3 carries going into the fourth quarter. They just didn't use him, and they didn't use Jamal Williams. I think you hit pretty hard because you had Jared Goff, but they dropped back and passed the whole time. Honestly, I thought that it would be big all around. I thought.
Yeah, because he only had 4 targets last week. It was weird. Because, like, you think even if they were going to throw the ball a lot, that he would be involved in the game plan.
Yeah, it was an enigma. I don't get it. But he missed real bad. This week, I'm continuing with this trend of this show, and I'm going with Isaiah Pacheco. We talked about him a ton already, but he's going to score more than Jerick McKinnon this week. He's going to get in the end zone. And I like him as a league winner the rest of the way. I think that he's a very talented player, and I think people are sleeping on him because he's wearing number 10. He looks like Tyreek Hill on the field, but the dude is talented, and he has great matchups the rest of the way, starting with Houston, which I've been picking on all year. He'll be in many DFS lineups, including the one later on, a little foreshadowing. The dude's going to ball out this week, and he's going to get me back on top.
Doubt it.
Love that for you.
Yeah. Zach doesn't remember who he is.
I felt good about him until you picked him.
He's gonna only get fumble touchdowns. He's gonna pick up fumbles like Tyreek Hill last week and get none of the yards.
Hey, it counts. It counted for Treylon Burks.
True. All right, the GOAT right now. OF1. How we doing?
I had Zay Jones last week. Finished as wide receiver 8, just behind, of course, wide receiver 7, Chris Moore, of the Houston Texans, as everybody had as well. So Zay Jones, he finally did score another touchdown. I mentioned that last week is the big thing with him. He had the target share, but he wasn't scoring any touchdowns. He did get a touchdown. He went 8 for 77 and 1 on 12 targets in that game. So yeah, wide receiver 8 paid off pretty well. This week, kind of continuing with my trend of going off the script a little bit, this isn't even a good matchup based off your charts, but I'm kind of fading them here. I'm going Zonovan Knight, the Jets' lead running back, who even with Michael Carter coming back, operated as that number 1 running back. I look at what he's done the last 3 games. He's gotten at least 14 carries in all of them, and he had 71 yards and a touchdown last week. The week before that, he had 90 yards. So the Lions, they are limiting running backs to points quite well over the last 3 weeks, as your charts show. However, they are missing Will Harris, Julian Okwara, and Derek Barnes probably for this game. So 3 of their starting front 7 are going to be missing in this game. So I like the ability to take for them to kind of take a step back and give up more on the ground than they normally do, missing those guys. So I think that there's a little bit of deception in those charts, not accounting obviously for those guys missing, but also for the game script of those opponents as well. So Zonovan Knight is my guy this week.
I love it.
You're saying there's holes in your chart. Are you going to defend your chart?
No, I don't.
It can't take into account injuries on the team.
It can't take into effect injuries like right away. No, but I do think a lot of people, especially on Reddit, they say, okay, like, does this mean that I should start like this random person over this guy that I have that's been
obviously
killing for me all season? And it's like, what I look at this as is, okay, like, there's tiers to these things. There's layers to it, right? It's like an onion. But really what you're after is like, all right, if I have Saquon, who has a tough matchup this week, am I going to bench him? No. But knowing that he has a negative matchup, where can I find pluses to make up for that difference? Or if I have a flex and it's like, all right, my flex has a really tough matchup, then maybe I do ride the bench on that. But to Zach's point, volume is ultimately king here. And the fact that Knight is getting the ball so much, they're probably going to have a banged up Mike White, even though he did say he's good to go. But they're probably going to lean on the run game a little bit more. And they also have a bona fide matchup. I'm surprised you didn't go Garrett Wilson again, because he has the second best matchup for receivers this week. So things looking good. But good deal. All right. So last week I had the Goff father, Jared Goff, finished as QB4. So very happy with his performance. So he was 27 for 39, 330 yards, 3 touchdowns. He only trailed behind Trevor Lawrence, who had a huge game, Jalen Hurts, who's a stud and beautiful human. And then Russell Wilson actually finished as QB3 last week, even though he didn't finish the game. So Russ was cooking. But yeah, very happy with the Goff performance. I don't know, like, he's QB10 on the year, but I don't know if I would play him again this season, unless you are in a Week 17 championship. He's got Chicago at home. To me, that has all the makings of the shootout, but don't like him this week against the Jets. Don't like him against Carolina on the road in Week 16. So he's somebody that you can kind of park on the bench for now, but we'll see where he lands. This week is a twofer for me. So this is the person that I think is going to be a league winner, and I also think is going to have a great week this week, and that's going to be Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook's kind of been struggling a little bit. He hasn't really done a whole lot. He only scored 8.6 fantasy points last week. He had 15 carries for 23 yards, and really just hasn't done a lot. He's had a lot of like RB2 performances, but he really hasn't lived up to the draft capital that he should be from what you'd expect. But I think these last 3 games, we're going to remember why Dalvin Cook is who he is. He has top 10 matchups in each of the next 3 weeks. Looking at this week in particular, he has the 3rd best matchup on paper against Indianapolis. They're a little bit more stout in the air. I think they're going to lean on the running game just because the defense has been so bad that they don't want to get into a shootout if they can avoid it. And I think Dalvin Cook's going to be a big reason that they finish the season strong. So if you got Dalvin Cook, I think you're in a great spot. It's definitely somebody that's going to be in your lineup if he can stay healthy. But it's a really juicy matchup for this week and the weeks coming forward. So riding with Dalvin, I think he's going to finally live up to the draft hype.
And if he does, everyone will forget about literally every single week prior to it. So
except for last week.
Shout out
There
to
you
my
go.
pregnant wife who just interfered with the show.
why?
I stole her pen.
Oh, unbelievable.
You're
Yeah.
sick. You're a sicko.
That's a no-no.
Gross.
All right, I think that's takes us to DFS.
Let's do some defis.
Yeah. So I'm going to start out with the Jets. The Jets are going to be in a lot of DFS lineups this week because of their matchup. I'm going to go on the disagreeing of Zach partly, only because I do think Zonovan Knight's still going to have a good game, but I really wanted to get Garrett Wilson in my lineup. And the best way to get Garrett Wilson in your lineup is to stack him with Mike White because of his cost at 5,400. If Garrett Wilson's getting 15 targets a week, Mike White's throwing 45 to 50 times a week. Even when he was getting destroyed last week, he threw 46 times. I like him to continue to do that against Detroit, mainly because I think Detroit's going to put up a lot of points, and I don't think the Jets are going to be able to just run the ball the way you expect them to, just because I think that they're going to have to keep up with the Lions. Even though the Jets have a good defense, the Lions are just hot, and like they're making a surge toward the playoffs. So I stacked Mike White at 5,400 with Garrett Wilson at 6,000. I can't believe he's still priced at 6,000 with the amount of targets he's getting on a week-by-week basis. And he hasn't scored in 2 weeks, so he is due, and he will get in the end zone this week. And then and I think Zonovan White's going to be good. I think that they're going to have to score a lot, so I think that all of those guys are going to be playable this week.
Zach and I both had Mike White as a top 10 quarterback option this week. And Mike White has quite possibly the easiest playoff schedule for quarterbacks overall.
Yeah, so he's my backup for Kyler Murray with his torn ACL, so at least I got that going for me. And then just a heads up, Justin Herbert has a phenomenal matchup this week too, and I thought about adding him and stacking him with Mike Williams because Mike Williams is just that streaky guy. As long as he stays on the field, last week he balled out. I think that he's going to carry this the rest of the way.
They both did. Him and Keenan Allen went off last week.
Yeah, and Justin Herbert has something to prove because
The Bachelor
boy woke up the fire of Justin Herbert.
He was unreal on Sunday night.
He looked amazing.
Yeah, so I like Justin Herbert, but at 7,200 for his DFS price point, it's really, really difficult to find a way to put him in your lineup at the cost.
I got to imagine that Mike Williams isn't like cheap either.
Yeah, I got him at 6,300, which is pretty solid.
Oh, that's not bad.
Yeah, so he's my wide receiver too. And then I wanted to pay up on Jamar Chase at 8,300 because they don't have Tyler Boyd. They don't have T. Higgins. Joe Mixon's been off since he had the concussion. He's going to get a ton of targets, so I like him. I would play him the rest of the way if you can in DFS just because the opportunity is just going to be there crazy. I don't care who their matchups are. And then somehow I had enough money to get Derrick Henry in my lineup, which if you can get Derrick Henry in your lineup, you get Derrick Henry in your lineup. So that's enough said with him. You don't have to talk. I did go with Cade Otton at tight end.
There we go.
Down. I know Zach was looking at him for only fantasy. My main reason for Cade Otton was that if you look at the Bengals defense on his chart, they have been taking it to quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers. The only spot where you can kind of move the ball against them has been at tight end with 15.6 points per game the last 3 weeks. And Tom Brady has no time to throw. So I can see them just sitting there throwing Cade Otton short balls and hopefully he gets in the end zone. At 2,900, that's a steal.
Yeah. Real quick, Drew, before you get back on the horse, we had a question come in. So, guys, should I drop Carr for Rodgers in case Lamar doesn't play week 16, need a decent backup? So one of the cool underappreciated things that we don't talk about with the charts is that we also list who the next week's opponent's going to be on the far right-hand side. If we take a look at that, you can see that I don't think I have this right. Yeah, because I have the same themes twice. I never updated. That's awkward. This is why we don't do stuff very quickly.
You look at Carr, I'll look at Rodgers.
All right. Well, hold on. I'll just fix it on my sheet, and I can do this super fast. Yeah. Okay. So next week, Green Bay has Miami, which is like a decent matchup. And then Carr ultimately has Pittsburgh, who has been the toughest matchup on paper for quarterbacks in the last 3 weeks. I think that's also heavily skewed on the fact that Baltimore didn't really throw the ball. Marcus Mariota doesn't really throw the ball, and Indianapolis employs Matt Ryan, who's like 127 years old. So I wouldn't necessarily be tied to those numbers as much as the chart shows. That being said, Aaron Rodgers has not done anything fantasy noteworthy this year. I think that there's going to be better streaming options for you. Like I mentioned, I think Mike White has the best fantasy schedule available for the playoffs, so he's somebody that you could be looking at. Anybody that plays Minnesota is obviously going to be a good matchup, so maybe like someone like Daniel Jones, if he's available, I think he could have a big week next week. And then Tennessee, I wouldn't really trust the Houston QB room, but their defense has been absolutely horrid. So for me, I don't think that the difference between Carr and Rodgers is really going to be a make or break it. So I don't know if it really moves the needle. I would be looking for alternative options. I would say Daniel Jones 1, Mike White number 2.
Okay. Nice.
That's good.
I agree. Back to did you just click at the same time as me?
No.
Back to DFS. Where were you, Drew?
I was at my flex. I only have the flex and defense to talk about yet. So for my flex, I had to pay down when I went for Jamar Chase and Derrick Henry. I went with Drake London.
Ooh, I like London this week. I was the only one that ranked him. I think Desmond Ridder, I had him ranked at 15. I'm really excited to watch him play, actually.
Yeah, so that's the reason. They're coming out of their bye with Desmond Ridder, and I think that they're going to let him throw the ball. And Drake London, without Kyle Pitts there, he's going to get majority of those targets. So at 4,600, that's an absolute steal to me for DFS for this week.
I have him ranked at 22 this week.
I could have sworn I ranked him, though. Did I not?
Jumping back into the top 30.
If I didn't rank him, I did mean to.
You did not.
Yeah, we really like messed our rankings up this week, Zach and I.
All right, cool.
So defense. This is actually a little spicy.
Oh.
Are you picking the Texans again?
I am not, but it's on the same path. I went with the Chicago Bears. At home at Soldier Field against the Philadelphia Eagles. It sounds absolutely crazy, but the weather's going to be bad, and the Eagles have to travel to Soldier Field, and in 2 weeks, they have the Dallas Cowboys on Christmas Eve, and I expect them to be looking ahead to that game, and I could see
the Eagles to be looking ahead.
Yes, to that game, and I could see them going to Soldier Field and flopping a little bit. Also, I didn't have the money to go up higher than that.
That's
you should have just left it at that because I was sold. I was all in.
That's why I took them over the other teams that were there. So I think that this could be a trap game for them.
Walk in the trap, take over the trap.
And it almost hit with the Texans one against the Browns that week until they started to turn the ball over on offense.
Yeah. It was the Browns that were scoring. Imagine if it was the reverse.
Yeah.
If they were the ones scoring those defensive and special teams touchdowns.
Yeah, and then real quick before we get out of here, last week's lineup, we had Kirk Cousins, Deontay Foreman, Swift, Nico Collins, which I said earlier I switched out Chris Moore.
Please don't bring him up again.
Philip Dorsett. Who, Nico Collins?
Mm-hmm.
Mute him.
No, I had Justin Jefferson, which could have been a huge impact if they didn't stop that play where he could have had that long touchdown and had almost 300 yards receiving and a touchdown. I had Chigo Okonkwo, my guy. Tony Pollard.
Guy.
Yeah, he was tight end 3 last week, so that was pretty cool.
He had a good game.
Yeah, and the Cowboys defense with Chris Moore, that one actually made some money. We put up 172 points, so that was pretty solid. It would have been in the top half, so. Depending on which format you went with, the number of teams and such impacts that. But we definitely at least doubled your money if you played with that lineup.
Nice. Good deal.
All right.
It looks like Matt had his choice of quarterbacks, so no problem. Thanks for checking out the show, man.
There we go. Oh, if you're still here, like, subscribe, do all that stuff. If you're not here,
follow me on my personal.
And then give a shout out to Big Booty Judy, who killed DFS lineups last week along with Evan.
Finally.
And
First time in his career.
Yeah, so those three guys, if you had them in your lineup, odds are you were in the top half as well.
Drew, how many leagues did you make the playoffs in?
I made
The best part about it is you were not ready.
I love
that
every time, but the man that only made it in one league is a little bitter to do that on me. So,
what just happened that made me want to do that? I can't remember what you just said.
Why can't you do it to Joe at least once, though? Why is it always
funny?
I can't remember what you just said though that made me want to do that.
You deserve that for the Nico Collins slander.
That's what it was. That's what it was.
That's fine. It's fine. It was worth the trade off. Nico Collins, right?
Last thing to talk about. This is the last time I'm going to be able to bring it up on here because it's going to wrap up before the next time we talk. Rock Around the 412 coming to an end this week on the 17th. So whether you guys are watching or listening to this, the 14th, 15th, 16th, or 17th, hopefully you guys still have time to get in your donations. Share it if you can. The last 5 years, we've raised over $24,000, getting close to $25,000 now raised to go directly to providing Christmas to local families, the kids of these families, and providing them with the Christmas that Tyler and I were able to have and never had to worry about having growing up. So every single penny that is donated to this goes directly to providing those gifts. And in return, we also do some giveaways that we get. And we also get the family a $100 gift card to be able to provide the holiday meal. So they have, Christmas in its entirety, just like Tyler and I have been able to have our entire lives. That was really the goal of creating this mission. Along with that, there has been a change. And I told Drew about this, but Joe wasn't on here yet. And I hope I don't get too emotional talking about it because it's really cool that she wanted to do this. So you guys have heard me talk about my late friend Dalton's daughter, Isla, who we wanted to provide Christmas for. Kaylee, who is Isla's mother, and I have been going back and forth talking about it. And they're in a fine spot financially. And Isla's going to be fine this Christmas, so she didn't want to do that. So what we did or are doing is adopting 10 kids that we've been given the names by the Salvation Army, and we're doing it in Dalton's name. So we're going to be able to provide Christmas for a lot more kids than what we thought we're going to be able to. And, for her to do that and just teach Isla, who her father was and what, really was important to him is awesome. So I'm very thankful that we're able to do that. And it's just awesome of Kaylee to do that. It was her idea. I can't take the credit for it. She texted me and was like, hey, I know that you guys really want to help out Isla, but we're fine. We would rather do this and teach her a lesson in the process. And when she grows up, realize that this is something that, she was a part of as well. So just found that out within the last 48 hours that that's what we're going to be doing instead of giving Isla her Christmas. But it's really cool. So.
Whew, man.
It's great.
The smoke in the club. It's crazy.
Yeah, I know. I did better on that than I thought I was going to. But yeah, you guys can still donate to Rock Around the 412. The link to that will be in the description of this, wherever you guys are watching or listening. Isla does, however, have a GoFundMe set up for her future. Obviously, the only burden that we can really help out with in all of this is going to be the financial one for her future, So there's a GoFundMe that's set up, and it's going to stay open for as long as I know. And you guys can contribute to that. I think it's around $34,000 raised since that was started. So great family, as you guys can tell based off of everything that I've said, But yeah, really excited about all of this stuff and really excited to get you guys pictures and videos within the next couple weeks. So we're getting close to Christmas. So a lot of Christmas is going to be made in the area, and that's 10 kids that we weren't anticipating on being a part of it that are going to be a part of it. So big shout out to Kaylee and Isla and everybody that's involved. Her parents donated to it. She had 2 friends that just got involved within the last day. So just really good stuff all around.
Good peeps, man.
Yeah. But other than that, for Smitty, for Drew, for Joe, we wish you guys the best of the luck as you kick off your fantasy football playoffs and come back right here next week to get more advice on how you can advance even further. Until next week, we'll talk to you then. Bye-bye.